Caribbean just announced the name of its new Icon class cruise ship, Legend of the Seas, and where and when it's going to sail. I've got all the details of what they revealed and what they didn't talk about, but I can kind of read the tea leaves here up next. Hey everyone, it's Matt from RoyalCaribbeanBlog.com. I'm really excited to share with you the new details about Legend of the Seas. Royal Caribbean is bringing back a ship name for the first time ever, and it's really appropriate here. Legend of the Seas will be the third Icon class cruise ship, following up on Icon of the Seas and Star of the Seas, which is going to launch in 2025. The name alone should be really significant for two reasons. First of all, legend is a big deal. Like, if you're calling something a legend, that means something because you think it really is grandiose and epic. But if you're a Royal Caribbean fan, you're going to know that this name has been used before. Prior to this ship, Legend of the Seas was the name of one of the cruise line's Vision class ships that was launched in 1995. Now, that ship would have been dwarfed by the new Legend of the Seas because the original was only 70,000 gross tons, whereas the new one is going to be 250,800 gross tons. The capacity of the old ship was about 2,000 passengers, and this one can max out at right around 7,000 passengers before we even get to crew members. Royal Caribbean sold the ship back in 2017 to the cruise line that is now known as Marella Cruises, and she's still sailing actually today under the name of the Marella Discovery. But Legend of the Seas is going to retake the name, and it's the first time Royal Caribbean has ever done this. They've never taken a name that was previously used and brought it back. And in this case, it made a lot of sense. I had the opportunity to speak to Kara Wallace, who's Royal Caribbean's Chief Marketing Officer, about Legend of the Seas and what they've got planned. And I wanted to share with you every single bit of data I got out of that talk. First of all, Legend of the Seas is going to debut in July of 2026, and she'll start offering 7-night Western Mediterranean cruises from Barcelona. This is another significant change because Royal Caribbean has shied away from putting its brand new ships in Europe off the bat for a couple of years. I think the last one might have been Harmony of the Seas. Granted, Odyssey attempted to do this, but because of a variety of issues that happened in 2020 and 2021, that didn't occur. But nonetheless, this is the first time in a while that you're getting an Icon class cruise ship in Europe. And she's going to spend the entire European cruise season there, offering cruises in the Western Med. And this is something that Ms. Wallace said is really important because Royal Caribbean heard from its customers that Europeans wanted to have an Icon class cruise ship in Europe, and they're finally going to get it. So between July and November, you'll have Legend of the Seas over in Barcelona, offering cruises there. Then, when the summer cruising season concludes, Legend will move to her new home port in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. She'll be sailing from Port Everglades beginning in November of 2026, offering 6-night Western Caribbean and 8-night Southern Caribbean cruises from Port Everglades. So not only are we getting a different port here with Port Everglades instead of Miami, which is where Icon of the Seas is, and Port Canaveral, which is where Star of the Seas is, but also some variations in the itineraries because the first two ships are only doing 7-night Eastern and Western Caribbean runs. Here with Legend, we're going to get, well, Western Caribbean runs, don't get me wrong, but also Southern Caribbean cruises, which will be really cool. So that way, you can go to places like Aruba and Curacao on the newest cruise ship in the world. You'll be able to start booking cruises later this week for Legend of the Seas. Now, Royal Caribbean says they're going to give Crown and Anchor members a 24-hour head start on the general public. I can tell you from experience that's totally meaningless because anybody can book the cruise. They just don't advertise publicly that's available to book. So more of a nuanced type thing. But you can start booking this cruise ship in just a few days. Now, that's essentially everything Royal Caribbean was willing to tell me about what's going to be new that we didn't know about Legend of the Seas. But obviously, there's going to be a lot more. And Royal Caribbean is going to sprinkle more information about Legend as we go through the year and get closer to her debut in July of 2026. But suffice to say, there are going to be changes to Legend of the Seas compared to certainly Icon and even Star of the Seas. One thing Royal Caribbean always does is they like to tweak and make changes based on guest feedback and things they can make improvements on in general based on how the other ships are doing. We've seen this with the Oasis class and the Freedom class, where every successive ship usually builds on what was working well and what areas they can improve on. And this has really been the case with the last few batch of cruise ships, where we've seen significant changes in ship design and offerings on board. Namely, the restaurants and the entertainment are going to be the biggest things that'll be different on Legend of the Seas. Royal Caribbean always differentiates the shows. So, first of all, no show on Legend of the Seas will probably be the same as the show you'll have seen on Icon or Star. They like to come up with new things. In fact, don't forget on Icon of the Seas, they have The Wizard of Oz as their main show. And then on Star of the Seas, we're going to have Back to the Future, the musical, as their main show. So that's a pretty high standard already for Legend. And with that kind of a name, they're going to need to really dig deep for something over there. And then beyond that, specialty restaurants. That's the other area you see a lot of change in typically, where Royal Caribbean likes to trot out new ideas and tweaks and enhancements. As an example, on Star of the Seas, they've already replaced Pier 7, which is one of the restaurants over in the Surfside neighborhood, and they're going to make that into a new concept that hasn't been revealed yet. And also Empire Supper Club and Icon will become Lincoln Park Supper Club, which is a Chicago-based themed restaurant. But here on Legend, it's going to be a California Hollywood themed restaurant, which of course the Supper Club, really great entertainment, really great food. It's a pretty high price tag as well, but it has been an amazing experience on the couple times I've done it on Icon. However, one thing you won't be able to say about Legend is that she's the biggest cruise ship in the world necessarily, because Royal Caribbean said they're not going to keep making all the Icon class cruise ships like 1 foot bigger than the rest. This is something that when I talked to Royal Caribbean about this back in January of 2024, that they weren't going to continue this little tradition they were doing with the Oasis class. Ultimately, we're going to need to wait a few more months to get more information about what we can expect on Legend of the Seas in terms of true differences and things that are totally new on board the ship. But certainly you could look at Royal Caribbean's recent history with the Oasis class and see where they've made changes on those ships and the differences there, and kind of draw some conclusions about likely cases for tweaks on board the Legend of the Seas. In case you're wondering, Legend is actually already under construction. We know the name now finally, but it has been under construction since January of 2024, and it's actually had its steel cutting ceremony back then. So the ship is definitely on its way and getting out to being closer to completion. Now, of course, they have some other milestones coming up, like the floating ceremony and delivery, but that'll be coming much closer to her launch date. What really stands out about Legend of the Seas to me is, first of all, it's debuting in Europe, something we haven't seen in a while. And obviously, if you're able to get over to Europe or you live around Europe, well, that's going to be very convenient and a good opportunity to get a ship there. Plus, even if you don't live in Europe, the appeal here is you get new itineraries. You don't have to go do more cruises to just Cozumel on these Icon class ships. We're getting European sailings, and for a lot of people, that's a big deal and a reason to go on a ship. I'm also, from a fanboy perspective, really proud that Royal Caribbean is reusing a name. I know that really doesn't mean much to the general public, but it's kind of cool they're reusing names, and I hope they continue this trend. I'd love to see Empress of the Seas return, Splendor of the Seas, and a few others. Heck, bring back Majesty and Monarch and Sovereign. Those are wonderful names, and we already know that Carnival's been doing that with some of its new ships. And I think with now Legend out the door, and we have that name here, I would love to see more classic names returning to cruise ships because they're beautiful names that really are fantastic for a cruise ship and very fitting. I'm also going to give you a reality check. And while we're recording this video before the prices for Legend of the Seas comes out, but you got to expect that it's not going to be cheap. I mean, you got to be looking at what Icon of the Seas is going for, what Star of the Seas is going for, and that's definitely going to be the basis, the starting point for prices on the Legend of the Seas. Anytime you have a new cruise ship, this goes back years and years and years, we've seen premium pricing for brand new ships. That is not new. And if you think the pricing for Icon and Star have been expensive, it's going to be just about the same, if not more so, for Legend. And this is because of the incredible demand. It's hard to explain here in a YouTube video how much demand Royal Caribbean and the entire cruise industry is seeing right now for its products. That doesn't make you feel better about it. It doesn't make it any more palatable to pay those prices. But you have to understand this isn't so much Royal Caribbean just sitting back in their chair and saying, well, we can charge whatever we want. It's more that the market is clearly demonstrating they want more and they're willing to pay for it. And if it was your business, I bet you would do the same thing. And again, doesn't make it any better. Would I love for the prices to be cheaper? Absolutely. But unfortunately, this is the reality of it. So if you're going to be booking a cruise on Legend of the Seas, prepare your pocketbook because it's not going to be cheap. Now, there are some strategies around that. You can obviously book well in advance. I always recommend booking your cruise as early as you can. Make payments along the way. So that way you're not paying the entire bill at the final payment date, but rather making periodic payments. You get a bonus, just regular payments. Your travel agent can do this for you. Royal Caribbean can offer this by simply calling them up and say, hey, can you please charge my credit card this much money? These are all ways to help break up that cost. And then, of course, there's other ways to save a little bit of money here and there on the sailing. Obviously, some travel agencies will have some group rates that are available. I know our good friends at MEI Travel, whom you can find a link to in the description below, oftentimes have great group sailing rates out there. And of course, if you live in a certain country like the US or Canada or Australia, you can take advantage of price decreases all the way up until final payment date. Now, apologies to our British viewers, this doesn't apply to you, but this is a way that if there are price drops, you can still take advantage of them. Ultimately, when you're talking about a brand new cruise ship and a ship that's named Legend of the Seas, this is a ship that is going to be pricey, but Royal Caribbean is truly going to want to build its most impressive cruise ship to date. I think that's definitely going to be the case here with Legend of the Seas. All right, I've talked enough and I've shared everything that I know about Legend of the Seas so far. Let me know in the comments below. I want to hear from you. What are you excited about? Will you be booking a cruise on Legend? Are you going to Europe for the cruise? Are you coming to the Caribbean? Are you going to do both? Maybe there'll be a transatlantic too. Who knows? I'm curious, what are you looking forward to about this ship, and will you be booking it? Let me know in the comments below. I'm looking forward to reading all of those. And while you're down below our video, hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications. That way YouTube lets you know when we have a brand new video to share. This has been Matt from RoyalCaribbeanBlog.com, and we'll talk again real soon.